I'm Jessica Minton for IBTimes TV with your midday market update, and I'm joined again by Mark Newton of Greywolf. So it's good to see you again. Now we have a lot of tech earnings coming out this week. We have Microsoft and Apple after the bell today. What are the big things that you're looking towards with these tech companies?
Well, they're two completely different companies, obviously, and both of them have had a substantial run really since the beginning of the year. Both of them are up about 20%. Apple has started to show a few signs of stalling out just in the last few weeks, getting up towards its highs from September 2012. So, it's really going to take a lot, I think, for the company to deliver. It's interesting because, not only are people concentrating on the iTunes, but obviously, many more products in the pipeline. They're starting to show a lot more focus on, quite a few things that might be important for the company, I think, going on. When you look at companies like Apple versus Facebook and Microsoft, all three companies have delivered in quite a few ways. It'll be interesting to see. Part of me is more familiar, I think, with what Microsoft and really what Facebook are doing than Apple. But it's interesting as they gravitate more towards, mobile payments and this and that, and doing more on their software versus just the hardware per se. I'm optimistic on the stock in the long term. I think in the short run, a lot of these companies have run their course and likely aren't going to be able to deliver, in terms of making, regardless of what the earnings and the revenues come, in terms of what they do in the short run.
Now for Apple, is the big thing looking at that September guidance that they have forecasting going forward?
That's definitely going to be important for them, I think. Regardless of what everything comes in, the stock has already anticipated a lot of this move, and so it's really going to need to blow out in a number of different factors to think that the stock can raise above $100 a share. There's been a consistent move towards old technology really in the last few months, and so these stocks have really run up in anticipation of being able to beat and deliver on a lot of different fronts. My opinion is the stock needs to pull back to the 80s. It'd be a lot better area to take a look at buying a stock versus at current levels. But yeah, that's certainly one thing. From a fundamental point of view, myself being technically oriented, a lot of the price and volume action seems to suggest that much is already baked in the stock at this point.
Looking at Microsoft, they did announce those job cuts, about 18,000 over the next year. When you look at it from a technical perspective, depending on what they do announce after the bell, what sort of impact do you think it'll have on the stock in the next 3-6 months?
Yeah, my thinking here is also, the stock has had a huge move in the last few months. It's gotten up to nearly $44 a share, so it's quite overbought. But long term, it's quite bullish. It's yet another example of these old technology companies that have broken out of big 10-year bases and are starting to show real signs of growth. And when you look at the CEO being a little more analytically minded and not really as blunt as maybe Ballmer or Gates. His message has been more towards productivity and really trying to really focus on the platform, and that should be interesting going forward and really seeing how they can deliver not only with different products in the future there. Facebook is very similar to both of the other companies and the stocks per se. Facebook, very similar to Apple, has moved up right below the prior highs that it hit back in March. It's very well positioned. Technically, the stock is quite bullish. I see it very unlikely the stock can get over $72, $73 before it pulls back. I'd love to have a chance at buying the stock as it pulls back to the 60s. They're likely going to announce something with regards to how the World Cup impacted their growth. We saw roughly 4 billion interactions and 350 million users accounting for those. So it's pretty impressive. And so the company obviously makes money based on not only total number of users but also interactions. And so I think they're hitting on all cylinders. And I expect that, regardless of what happens in the short term, that if you look at Facebook, Apple, or Microsoft, any three of these companies were to pull back into the fall, they both, any of them would be, I think, great to buy on pullbacks. I'm just scared about, I'm hesitant to recommend that all of them are going to go higher regardless of what the earnings are, just because all of them have had a really big run.